Its angels protect you. 7 signs angels have been visiting you for generations. People were taught that angels were distant, rare, and reserved only for prophets or sacred stories of the past. But the older traditions never said that. They taught the opposite. Angels move quietly, subtly, and often unnoticed, especially in ordinary lives. In the first moments of this message, understand this clearly: angels do not announce themselves with spectacle. They reveal their presence through order, interruption, and guidance that feels strangely precise. Many people miss these signs because they expect drama instead of discernment. Ancient teachings describe angels as messengers, not performers. They adjust paths, protect timing, and redirect outcomes long before danger or loss becomes visible. If angels have been visiting you, the evidence is not found in visions, but in patterns. Moments where something should have gone wrong but didn't. Delays that later revealed protection. Thoughts that arrive uninvited. It proved decisive. This chapter restores the traditional understanding that angelic presence is practical, not mystical. Angels operate within structure, not emotion. They guide through clarity, restraint, and alignment. The modern world teaches people to dismiss these experiences as coincidence. The tradition teaches discernment. When angels visit, they do not seek attention. They leave traces of order. Sudden calm in chaos. A closed door that saves you later. A quiet nudge that changes direction without force. These are not accidents. They are signals. This chapter exists to reawaken awareness, not excitement. The signs of angelic presence are subtle because they respect free will. Angels do not override choice. They illuminate it. If you have felt guided without knowing why, protected without explanation, or interrupted at exactly the right moment, tradition would say this plainly. You are not alone, and recognizing the signs is the beginning of cooperating with them, rather than resisting their guidance. Why angelic signs are often missed: protection disguised as delay. One of the clearest signs angels have been visiting you is when progress is delayed in ways that later prove protective. In ancient tradition, delay was never seen as denial. It was seen as intervention. Angels are guardians of timing more than outcomes. They understand sequences the human mind cannot see from within a single moment. When something stalls unexpectedly, when momentum pauses without explanation, it is often because moving forward would have exposed you to harm, loss, or misalignment. Most people interpret delay as failure because they measure life only by speed. Angels measure life by order. When angels intervene, they rarely remove desire. They adjust timing. This is why certain plans collapse at the last moment, why agreements fall through, or why opportunities seem to vanish just before completion. At the surface, it feels frustrating. In hindsight, it often feels merciful. Angels work ahead of events. They do not wait for damage to occur before acting. They redirect before consequences become visible. This chapter restores the older understanding that delay is one of the most common forms of angelic protection. The reason it is overlooked is because protection does not announce itself. It feels neutral, sometimes even disappointing. But neutrality is its signature. Angels do not create emotional highs or lows. They stabilize outcomes. When you experience repeated pauses that later reveal clarity, you are seeing evidence of guidance. Tradition teaches that angels respect free will, which is why they do not force awareness. They allow you to experience the pause and later recognize its purpose. Over time, this builds trust in timing rather than urgency. When you learn to recognize protective delay, impatience softens. You stop forcing doors that refuse to open. You begin to sense when restraint is wiser than action. Angels communicate through these moments, teaching discernment without words. If you look back and notice that certain delays saved you from regret, conflict, or irreversible choices, then tradition would say this clearly. That pause was not accidental. It was guidance, and recognizing it trains you to move with life instead of against it. Repeated patterns and unlikely coincidences. Another unmistakable sign of angelic visitation is the repetition of patterns that gently steer you toward awareness. Angels do not shout. They repeat. When the same message appears through different forms, conversations, symbols, timing, or unexpected encounters, it's not coincidence. In the traditional sense, it is reinforcement. Ancient teachings describe angels as messengers of order, An order expresses itself through consistency. When you keep encountering the same theme, the same warning, or the same redirection from unrelated sources, something is trying to be noticed. These repetitions often arrive without emotional charge. They feel calm, even ordinary. That is intentional. Angels communicate in ways that do not overwhelm the mind. They allow recognition to arise naturally. This chapter is important because modern thinking dismisses repetition as randomness. Tradition sees it as emphasis. When angels visit, they rarely intervene once. They guide progressively, allowing understanding to deepen without force. You may hear the same advice from different people who do not know each other. You may encounter the same idea in unrelated places at critical moments. You may feel repeatedly drawn away from one path and toward another without a dramatic reason. These are signs of alignment being reinforced. Angels do not override choice. They illuminate options until clarity becomes unavoidable. Over time, ignoring these patterns creates discomfort, while following them creates ease. This contrast is deliberate. It trains discernment. Ancient wisdom teaches that angels confirm direction through repetition because repetition builds trust. When something appears once, it can be dismissed. When it appears consistently, it invites attention. This is how guidance remains gentle, yet persistent. If you recognize repeated themes shaping your decisions, protecting your timing, or refining your direction, you are witnessing angelic order at work. These patterns are not meant to control you. They are meant to support you. And once noticed, they become easier to follow. Sudden inner calm in the middle of chaos. One of the most subtle yet powerful signs of angelic visitation is an unexpected sense of calm that arrives precisely when circumstances should provoke fear or confusion. According to ancient tradition, angels do not always change external events. More often, they stabilize the inner state, so that correct decisions can be made without panic. When chaos surrounds you and your mind becomes unusually quiet, this is not emotional numbness. It is clarity. Angels operate through order, and order begins internally. This calm is not something you force or practice. It arrives without effort. It interrupts worry rather than suppressing it. Many people mistake this calm for detachment, but tradition teaches it is protection. Panic leads to reactive choices. Calm preserves discernment. When angels visit, they reduce inner noise so that perception sharpens. You may notice that in moments of potential crises, you suddenly feel grounded, able to observe without being overwhelmed. This allows you to respond rather than react. The modern world associates safety with control. Ancient wisdom associates safety with clarity. Angels restore clarity first. This chapter matters because it reframes peace as a signal, not a reward. The calm that arrives in chaos is not denial. It is guidance. It prevents unnecessary damage by keeping the mind steady while events unfold. Over time, recognizing this calm builds trust. You stop resisting it or questioning it. You learn that when calm appears without explanation, something is being managed beyond your immediate awareness. Angels do not remove responsibility. They preserve capacity. They ensure that even in difficult moments, your inner state remains intact. If you have experienced peace where fear should have dominated, tradition would say this without hesitation. That calm was not accidental. It was support, and noticing it allows you to cooperate with it rather than override it. Doors closing that later reveal protection. Another clear sign angels have been visiting you is the experience of doors closing at moments when you expected progress. Ancient teachings consistently describe closed doors as one of the primary tools of angelic guidance. Angels protect not only through opening paths, but through sealing others. When something ends abruptly, a relationship, a job, an opportunity, it often feels like rejection or loss. Yet with time many people realize that what closed was preventing greater harm or misalignment. Angels work ahead of consequences. They intervene before damage becomes visible. This is why closed doors often make no sense in the moment. They challenge the ego's plan while preserving the soul's direction. This chapter restores the older understanding that not all endings are failures. Some are safeguards. Angels do not explain themselves immediately because explanation would remove trust. Instead, they allow understanding to unfold naturally as life progresses. When a door closes and later events reveal what was avoided, clarity replaces frustration. You begin to see that protection does not always feel kind when it arrives. It feels firm. It removes what does not belong before it can harm what does. Over time, recognizing this pattern changes how you respond to endings. You stop forcing you stop chasing what is clearly withdrawn. You learn to pause and observe what opens next. Angels guide by subtraction as much as addition. If several closed doors in your past later revealed hidden danger, regret, or limitation, tradition would say this clearly. You were being guarded, and learning to trust closed doors is one of the clearest signs of alignment with angelic guidance. A quiet sense of being guided, not forced. The final, and perhaps most revealing sign angels have been visiting you is a quiet sense of guidance that never feels forced. Angels do not pressure, rush, or overwhelm. Their presence is marked by subtle direction rather than command. You may notice that certain choices begin to feel naturally correct, while others lose their appeal without dramatic reason. This is not confusion. It is refinement. Ancient tradition teaches that angels guide by illumination, not coercion. They adjust perception so that the right path becomes obvious without struggle. When angels are near, decision-making feels lighter. You are not pushed forward by fear or pulled backward by doubt. Instead, there is a steady sense of this way that carries no urgency. This is how free will is honored. Angels never override choice. They clarify it. Over time, this guidance feels less like external help and more like inner alignment. That is intentional. Angels work to restore coherence between thought, feeling, and action. When this coherence is present, life feels less chaotic even if circumstances remain complex. You stop second-guessing every step. You move with quiet confidence, not because you know the outcome, but because you trust the direction. This chapter completes the pattern of signs by showing that angelic presence matures into steadiness. At first, the signs appear as protection, delay, repetition, calm, and closed doors. Eventually, they become discernment itself, when guidance no longer needs to interrupt you because you are already attentive. Angels have done their work. If you sense that life is gently steering you without force, tradition would say this plainly. You are being guided, not controlled. And recognizing this is not the end of angelic involvement, but the beginning of cooperation. If these signs resonate, pause and reflect rather than rushing forward. Share which sin felt familiar in the comments. Subscribe for deeper traditional teachings, and allow discernment to grow quietly before seeking the next answer.